Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 4. How many aircraft do you think we'll need? Ragathol asked, studying a projected map of the route the Dark Legion raiding forces would take from the Citadel to deep inside capital territory. Not many, my master. Unlike Azarath's original annihilation of the settlement, ours will not be a frontal attack, said Calicobal, sitting at the controls of the wall projection system. It's not a demonstration of our power, but rather a demonstration of infiltration skills. We'll steal into the city, take back the woman, and return here in a single night. We won't need many aircraft. We have more than enough capital machines available for use, and more than enough heretics ready to help us. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, what is it? Ragathol smiled serenely at the plans being shown him, then turned to face a heretic seconds before he entered the nether room. Because he was unsummoned and unexpected, the human's presence irritated the Nephirite, and he did not choose to hide it. By what reason do you intrude in my most sacred residence? I beg you hear news, Master Ragathol, the heretic said nervously. News that will not please you. I will decide if the news displeases me, Ragathol snapped. What is it? The woman, the receptacle of visions, she's no longer at the capital location. You mean she's gone? She's been lost to us? That the humans outsmarted us? With each response, Ragathol's anger grew, as did the electric green sparks that danced over his body. The power he generated began interfering with the projection system, and Calicobal hurriedly shut it down. You jeopardize my triumph? Ragathol continued. The wrath of the apostles be upon you. The moment he pointed at the heretic, Ragathol had him pinned against the wall beside the entrance. The same green sparks that first appeared on his body now covered the heretics. They had him writhing in agony and seemingly unable to catch his breath. Were it not for the power Ragathol used to keep him pressed against the wall, he would be a twitching heap on the floor. Master, please, he managed to scream. We know who's taken her. Very well. Speak, Ragathol ordered. The moment he lowered his hand, the torture ended, and the heretic collapsed to the floor. For the first few irritating moments, all he could do was gasp heavily. I said speak, or do you wish me to summon the powers and rip the information from your mind? No, Master Ragathol, said the heretic, finding the strength to barely raise his head. It's Bauhaus. They raided the capital location and took the receptacle of visions from them. She's now in their territory, but we don't know where. That will be easy to find. The anger flowed out of Ragathol, as did the sparks it generated. His mouth curled into a hellish smile, and he laughed softly. Of all the human organizations, we've had our greatest success in corrupting and infiltrating Bauhaus. Their leadership is arrogant and believes no outside force can threaten it, human or legion. Calicobal, a change in plans. Alert those who serve us in the Bauhaus organization to hunt down where it's hiding the receptacle of visions. Tell them to be quick. I grow tired of these delays. You have served me well. Now leave my presence."
Yes, master,"
the heretic answered, picking himself up and staggering to the entrance. There, he was grabbed by several Tekrons who silently carried him off. Ragathol waited until they had all left before turning and walking to a seat in front of the wall projector. His limp was more pronounced than before, and he held his injured arm instead of just letting it hang oddly at his side. When he sat down, he virtually crashed into the seat, the heavy thud forcing Calicobal to notice it.
"Are you tired, my master?"
the necromutant asked hesitantly. "I am not as completely healed as I thought," said Ragathol. "The humans on Luna inflicted more than mere nuisance injuries on me. They interfere with my ability to use the dark gifts. Leave me now. I wish to rest, and when I bid for you to return, I'll expect to see new plans for stealing the receptacle of visions from Bauhaus." "You should visit me more often than you do, Mitch," Tim Small tried to casually remark, though he could not hide the glee in his voice. "Especially when you bring such gifts." He fairly sprinted to his apartment's tiny kitchen, where he unwrapped the layers of plastic from the package Hunter had given him. Beneath them was a layer of heavy wax paper, and under it was a mound of finely ground red meat in a styrofoam tray. After smelling it for a moment, Small put the tray beside the sink, where he washed his hands and cleaned a few of the utensils lying in it.
"How much of that did you give him?"
asked Alvarez, looking at the mound of fresh meat.
"A full kilo,"
Hunter answered, pausing when he noticed the surprised look on Alvarez's face.
"Why not? What we need him to do just isn't expensive, it's also dangerous. There's just something about the smell of fresh hamburger that the veggie burgers and the nuke patties can't ever capture,"
said Small.
"Delicious. You know the way to my heart, Mitch. You want one?"
"We had plenty in the officer's mess. Enjoy yourself."
"Don't worry, I will."
Cupping a small amount of the ground beef in his hand, Small worked it first into a ball, then flattened it into a patty, and dropped it onto the skillet he had on rapid heat. The moment the hamburger landed on the hot surface, it sizzled loudly, and moments later, juices began running from it.
"Leo, close that door," said Hunter. "If the rest of the people in this building smell what Tim has, they'll beat the door down for it." "I don't think anyone in this place but Tim knows what real hamburger smells like, or can afford to buy it,"
Vanetti replied, only turning to look at the door instead of closing it. Seconds later, Redfield came through the apartment's entrance and closed it. With the exception of Rogers, the entire squad had at last arrived.
"Excellent, Mitch. This is the real McDonald,"
said Small, after taking the first bite of his hastily made dinner.
"It may be real, but is that healthy for you?" said Taylor sarcastically. "Nuke Foods have replaced most of the fat in a burger with soy meal." "Yeah, you know why Nuke Food packages its burgers in plastic?" Shecker added. "It's because they hope some of the plastic will rub off on them and double their nutritional value." "It looks like you haven't used this since the last time we were here," said Hunter, examining the Neuralink helmet and finding a fine layer of dust on it. "You know how much this cybersuit cost us?" "More than the computer, but I prefer doing my work the old-fashioned way," said Small, moving out of the kitchen. "At a computer keyboard, cyberspace is for kids. Always has been, always will be. I'm 20 years too old for it." "So how do you expect to find anything about this mysterious woman Bauhaus kidnapped?" said Alvarez. "Everyone knows all the latest info is floating out there in cyberspace. So's a lot of rumors and false reports. It'd take forever to sort through it all. Watch closely, and I'll show you how a pro works." Small took the well-worn seat in front of a computer as he finished his luxury hamburger. Already activated, all he had to do was stroke a few keys, and data blocks immediately began appearing on the screen. Not surprisingly, they were all from Roswell's Central Hospital. "Now, none of the news shows gave a name to this mystery VIP," Small continued. "And your cyberspace is filled with all sorts of fiction about her being the wife of a board member or a spy. Instead of putting up with that, I went right to the source through my favorite back door, the hospital's nutrition, planning, and service center," asked Hunter, leaning closer to the screen. Just a fancy name for a kitchen. Hey, everyone's gotta eat, even if it's by IV tube. So as you can see, only one woman matching the description of the kidnapped VIP had her nutrition program canceled today. But this says she was discharged, said Wendy Levine, joining Hunter behind Small's back and effectively blocking off what he was doing from the rest of the squad. "Of course, since when is there a computer code for kidnapped?" Small replied, glancing over his shoulder at Levine. Then he tapped another key. "But take a look at this. If she was discharged, why doesn't the hospital's account department have any bill made up for her? Especially considering the amount of care she's been given." With the stroke of another key, Small brought up a file on the medical services and treatments lavished on the woman from the day she was admitted to the hospital until practically the hour of her kidnapping. After he started scrolling through the pages, Wendy asked him to slow down so she could examine the course of treatments. "Sarah Smith, is that the patient's real name?" asked Hunter. "Heck no, it's a code name used to keep VIPs anonymous," said Small. "The hospital must have used it more than a dozen times in the past year. It's one of the first things I looked for after you called me. Eventually, I'll get her real name." "Captain, I've seen this course of treatment before," Wendy advised. She had since taken over the scroll keys and was busy sifting through Small's newly acquired file. "It's used to rehabilitate patients who've suffered long-term imprisonment or torture. Some of the best psychiatrists Capital has on Venus were here to treat her. And I should know, I've studied with most of them. Maybe this woman was some kind of agent or freelancer working on a covert operation?" questioned Alvarez. "Perhaps Bauhaus wanted revenge for something she did to them." "If so, it's mighty expensive revenge they settled for," said Hunter. "How many copters did they lose? 4? And almost that many damaged? Not to mention nearly 24 men and women killed. Tim, what else can you tell me about the mystery woman? Anything on her background?" "Nothing," Small admitted. "In fact, it's what I can't find about her that tells me more than what I have. Usually, I can discover an anonymous VIP's identity from the type and origin of the communications they get, what medical plan or bank account is paying for their stay, and so on. However, for the mystery woman, there's nothing. She has no apparent social status, wealth, or connections with any of the corporation's top levels or the military. And for the quality of care she got, you have to have connections like those. She's becoming a bigger mystery by the minute. You mean you got nothing else on her?" "I do have one thing. Excuse me, Wendy." Once he got his keyboard back, Small brought up another file. This time, it was a passenger manifest from the Inner System Spaceways, the largest of the Capital-affiliated space lines. It listed all recent arrivals at the nearby Atlantis spaceport. Seconds after bringing up the file, Small had it narrowed down to one section. Our mystery woman may not be from this planet, said Small. She matches the description of a passenger taken off an ISS liner by spaceport security. Notice the arrival date? It matches to the day of her admission to the hospital. And here's the security report on her. The physical description is a perfect match. Indeed it is, said Hunter. Now it was his turn to take control of the keyboard. And the flight's point of origin was the capital spaceport on Luna. You could be right, Julia. Remember hearing about that recent covert operation against a Bauhaus weapon plant on Luna? It was carried out by a freelancer, a woman. She must have done some real heavy damage to warrant this kind of revenge, Vanetti observed, standing beside the desk everyone had crowded around. What do we do about it? Look into it further and see if a rescue operation can't be mounted. Why, Captain? Halston said. If she's a freelancer, then she knew the risks when she was contracted for the job. It's not like she's one of us. You're forgetting, Sergeant. Some of my friends are now freelancers, Hunter said sharply. This could be one of them, though the description doesn't exactly fit Pam Afton. There's one place in Roswell where her true identity and complete background would be listed, said Small. The protected files in the hospital's computer system. But to get to them, I'll have to use one of those terminals in the hospital itself, or hook a portable one directly to the database. I know how that can be done, Wendy offered, especially in this hospital. What do you say, Captain? Rule number 1 of freelance ops, said Hunter. Don't get caught. I want both of you to be careful going in there. Security's bound to be paranoid after today's attack. You have any other advice, Captain? Rule number 2. If you get caught, act innocent. Real cute, Mitch, Small commented, looking up from his keyboard. Don't worry, I have no intent to spend so much as a night in a detention cell. If we do it right, it'll be a quick in and out. Captain, what should the rest of us do? Asked Shacker. Go back to our quarters and rest, said Hunter, checking his wristwatch. If this mystery woman is as valuable as she appears to be, then she'll have to be rescued, and I'm gonna do a little planning toward that end. Afterward, I'll enjoy a full night's sleep, and after all the time we've spent in the field, we deserve it. Does anyone know why they attacked the Central Hospital at Roswell and not the airbase? Asked Captain Miranda Jackson, one of the technicians at Venus Command's Tri-Services Satellite Reconnaissance Office. The brass down the hall and up the line know, said her commander, Colonel Michael Torin. But ours is not to reason why. Our task is to find and verify. Have you had any luck? Nothing yet, though this is just the beginning of the last sweep. The black woman waved a hand at her console display screen, 2 feet wide and 2 feet high. The screen was slowly running through the still images taken by the Oracle on its last orbit. The satellite was Capital's principal strategic reconnaissance platform and occupied a high equatorial orbit, allowing it to photograph all of Venus except for its extreme polar regions. While Jackson's console ran the still images, the next one to her ran the images created by the satellite's side-looking radar system. Less than a dozen feet away, a third console was busy running the scans made by its infrared sensors. The digitized radar data was presented in one continuous scroll of what appeared to be a high-resolution black and white photograph. God, when is this gonna end? Muttered the radar imaging specialist after Colonel Torin had moved to another part of the office. I bet slave driver Torin is going to keep us here for the whole night. And I bet you think that's real deprivation, said Jackson, matching her sarcastic remark with a sharp look. She caught Lieutenant Josh Weber's eye and quickly turned his pained expression into one of embarrassment. For someone who 18 months ago was wasting his time in cyberspace, I bet it is. You should spend a tour of duty at a forward base, where you're either being bored to death or getting your butt shot off by some Mishima commando squad. After that, spending a night in a comfortable, air-conditioned room with a fully stocked cafeteria downstairs won't sound so bad. Yes, but if we're tired, we could miss something important, Weber said meekly. Why do we have to rush this? Because who knows what interrogation or torture they're inflicting on the woman they kidnapped. Bauhaus can be pretty nasty to its prisoners if they're not military. Wait, this looks different. Colonel, I think I've got something. Jackson's warning brought Torin running back to her console, shouting orders for other imaging specialists to freeze their searches and coordinate with the frame she had stopped on. By the time he reached her, Jackson was magnifying an innocuous-looking smudge on the frame until it filled the screen. This is the maximum enhancement I can coax out of the computer, she said, with Torin standing behind her. What we're looking at is a scientific research and conservation base. It's the largest in the area and supervises the operations of many smaller stations. Because of that, it has a well-equipped airfield, hospital, and headquarters facility. It also has a small detachment of Venusian Rangers for defense, Torin added. So if you're going to say military activity drew your attention to it, then it's a false alarm. Not this kind of military activity. These aren't standard equipment for a small garrison force. Jackson pointed to the many helicopters sitting on the airfield, some of which looked as though they were caught in the process of being moved into the base's lone hangar. Longrider 220s and Python 100 gunships, the exact type of aircraft used on the Roswell attack. Yes, they certainly look like them. Torin studied the fuzzy images and was able to count the number of rotor blades on each machine and could see which had stub wings. But it's not conclusive enough, Miranda. These ships could be part of a training exercise. We have to prove these are the same machines used in the attack. Digital resolution will make these machines a lot clearer. We could even read their military registration numbers. Footage from the hospital security cameras and the Special Forces Cutlass would help us identify a few. All we really need to do is ident one. Lester, what are you reading on this site? The thermal sensors aren't too effective at this slant range, said the officer at the infrared imaging console. But what I can tell you is all those copters were recently flown. Their engines are still warm, and one of them looks like it took some damage in an engine pod. Hardly the sort of thing you get on a training flight, said Jackson. Battle damage should have shown up even better than registration numbers. It should, Torin mused before he looked at the back of the room. Major, what does Tactical have to say about this site? Bauhaus military calls it Base Aquila, which means eagle in some ancient Earth language, said an Air Force major assigned to the reconnaissance office. He glanced down at the tactical display screen just long enough to check its latest information. And from what my computer is showing, it's just within range of the Long Riders and Pythons flying from Roswell, provided they launched from a Bauhaus forward base. I think we can safely assume that. Miranda, how long will it take to refine what you have? The rest of the night, at least, said Jackson, checking on the progress her console was making. It would help us if the satellite could be repositioned on its next orbit, especially Lester at infrared. Yes, a more direct view of this site would help greatly, Torin admitted. But it could give away what we're up to. Oracle is closely watched by all the megacorps, and changing its orbit could arouse Bauhaus suspicions. It's too important to risk that. You know what the Brotherhood calls the Oracle? the great and only surveillance eye of the Sinisterium. Even they think the information it provides is too important for it to be risked or threatened. I'm sorry, we'll just have to put up with refinement and enhancement. Lieutenant, you were saying?
Nothing, sir,
said Weber, stifling a groan while still in the middle of it.
We'll work through the night to resolve this problem if we have to.
Good. Get on it. Miranda, you're in charge. I'll tell the cafeteria to send up some coffee for us, and some wine-suppressant pills for Mr. Weber.
Mutant Chronicles, Fiction. The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 4, End.